Welcome back. The Twyg Sustainable Fashion Awards facilitate important conversations around sustainability in the fashion industry. The event brings together stakeholders, including designers, consumers and environmental advocates, to discuss the challenges and opportunities in creating a more sustainable fashion landscape. By celebrating those who lead by example, the Twyg Sustainable Fashion Awards play a crucial role in fostering a culture of conscious consumption and ethical fashion in South Africa, paving the way for a more responsible and innovative industry. We're joined virtually by the founder, Jackie May, for more on this. Jackie, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, and good morning to you and your viewers.
Good morning. What prompted your decision to create the Twyg Sustainable Fashion Awards, and what were your initial goals for this initiative?
Firstly, we really want to highlight and celebrate people doing work sustainably and intentionally and ethically. I think everybody knows that the fashion industry, clothing and textiles industry across the globe are a key driver of climate change.
Yes.
And the conversation around the just transition is amplifying, and fashion as a culprit of this really needs to be addressed. So instead of taking a negative point of view, we really want to showcase the people doing the great work at changing and doing interesting things and important things with textiles and clothing to change the fashion industry, to make it more sustainable.
And over the past 6 years, Jackie, how have you seen the South African fashion landscape change in terms of sustainability and ethical practices?
There's been, it's still difficult. The fashion industry has lots of competition with cheap imports. With illegal secondhand clothing. But I have noticed, and there's been a really big commitment from the stakeholders in the industry to come together and to talk about how, firstly, to localize the industry, to grow production and manufacturing locally. And then secondly, from our independent designers, there's been a really big change in the way they are talking, thinking, and making fashion. So as we grow the space, more and more people are thinking about the impact of their clothing and of how they make clothes. So our work at Twyg is to talk to both the consumers and the producers, and both industry and independent designers.
Yeah. Do you want to share some success stories or standout designers who have participated in these awards and made a significant impact?
So we've recognized, our role is really to recognize those that are already doing work, and then they go on to grow. Some of them win cash prizes, and then they go on to do bigger things and better things and can grow their businesses. So in our first awards, 2019, we awarded Sindisa Khumalo and Lucanyo Madingi. Lucanyo Madingi has gone on to win 2 big international prizes, and is continuing to do work with artisanal communities across the continent, working with them and their natural fibers. We've seen a lot of work with the designers working with our local animal fiber producers in the wool and mohair sectors especially, and that connection and those collaborations have increased as we grow this ecosystem. So every year there are 30 designers who are recognized either by being finalists or winners. And, obviously now every year we add another 30 to that ecosystem. And our role is to connect and to network, to ensure that people are supported in their work. It's not easy. I mean, especially for small brands and small businesses, running a business and being a designer and being creative, and then of course marketing your goods is difficult. So our role is to support as much as we can, as a small business ourselves.
Indeed. Now, Jackie, what criteria do you employ to evaluate the nominees for the awards, and really what qualities are you looking for in sustainable fashion designers?
So, essentially, sustainability and sustainable fashion used to have quite a bad rap for just looking like, rags. So it's very important that the idea of fashion is still part of the criteria. So we're looking for quality, beautiful garments or accessories. And we want to make sure that they are made in ethical environments. So the social impact is really, really important, or the social environment of factories or studios is important. So we work, so we consult SACTU, the union, to make sure that we run the winners past them, just to ensure that they are in fact compliant. And then we are looking for transparency. Transparency is really important in the sector, as far as possible, to understand where resources are from. So, materials and finishes and dyes, where were they sourced, if possible. It's not always possible because it's a very complicated and very big and globalized industry, this. We like to hear and see and read about a position on climate change, on pollution and environmental damage. So those are the overall criteria. And then there are 10 categories, and each category has its own set of criteria.
Right.
And then we have 6 really, really good judges who come from different parts of the world with a set of expertise, and they bring their expert eyes into the process of judging. So it's a really intense and very thorough process, one that I'm very proud of.
And how do you think the Twyg Sustainable Fashion Awards influence consumers' attitudes towards ethical and sustainable fashion?
Well, I mean, we hope. It's really hard to measure. We are ultimately a media platform, and we do events, and because we're so passionate about sustainability and fashion, we've got to create some of this ourselves, because there's not much else happening. Nobody else is doing the Sustainable Fashion Awards. So we need to make sure that these things happen, to make sure that people are celebrated and that there are stories to tell that will then impact consumers. We have done an impact study where we surveyed our readers, and we spoke to key industry people to understand what our impact is. And it was really very, very positive.
Yeah.
100% of people who answered our survey said our work and the awards has made an impact on their decision making. Whether, ultimately South Africans are very price sensitive, and not sustainability is sometimes seen as expensive, but we're trying to change that perception too, because that's not necessarily the fact. And so we're trying really hard to influence consumers to make better choices.
And from your vantage point, what are some of the key steps that South African designers can take to further embrace sustainable and circular fashion practices?
So the longevity is really, really important. Making quality clothing, and clothing that people will wear over and over and over again, and clothing that people will develop an emotional attachment to, so that clothes aren't thrown away. So the problem with the fashion industry, that clothes have become so cheap that people don't cherish their clothes. They discard them quite easily because it's quite cheap to replace them. So at Twyg, we really want to develop an understanding of clothing as something that you invest in, that you develop a relationship with your clothing, that you look after them, even take care of when you're washing clothing, to understand the best way to wash your clothing, and then to repair them rather than to replace them.
All right, and looking towards the future, I mean, what are some of your hopes for the Twyg Sustainable Fashion Awards and the broader sustainable fashion movement in South Africa?
I would love all our clothes to be made locally. I would love more jobs to be created for the clothes, to be making the clothes that we wear. I would love a move towards more natural fibers, because I'm very terrified of what plastic is doing to the environment and to animals and to our own health. And then I would love to take the awards across the continent, because the continent has got incredible fashion, and I'd like us to be sharing more of that with our audiences and audiences across the world, really.
Right.
And I would like everybody to be reading Twyg and to be following us on Instagram.
All right. Jackie, lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
You too. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. That was founder of the Twyg Sustainable Fashion Awards, Jackie May, talking to us about the importance of sustainability in fashion, as well as the upcoming awards show taking place on the 20th of November.